G'day and welcome to the Pub Test. You're probably wondering, well, what is this channel going to be all about? Well, to begin with, we're going to be looking at some true crime cases and just breaking down some of the evidence. So we're not going to be doing a whole rundown of all of the cases from start to finish and going through the unpicking of all the detail. We're going to be discussing some very well-known cases, but with a slight twist. Like, would the story pass the pub test? So you're probably wondering now, what is the pub test? In Australia, it's quite a common term. And just to explain how the pub test thing works. If a politician decided to go pick up their child, say it's young Henry, because they're going to be late for their sport on the weekend, so they decide to take the government helicopter. So they go in the helicopter, pick up young Henry, and then fly back to the sporting field and book that to their government travel expense account. Well, when that gets found out, they might try to explain this away by saying, well, it's because the day before I was a little bit behind time, and then I actually had to catch up on some office work, so I really didn't have the time to drive the half hour to pick him up and then take him back to the sporting field, so it really was government business. That wouldn't pass the pub test. If you went down to a local pub and told that story, they would say, well, nah, you're going to have to pay for that helicopter trip yourself. So you might not necessarily have pubs, you might call them bars or clubs. Actually, probably not a club, because a club is a totally different environment than what we're talking about. But it could be a coffee shop, a tea house, anything like that, where people are gathered together and you might start telling some stories. Now, do your stories pass the pub test? Does it make sense? Would the everyday person believe it? And in Australia, we tend to meet at pubs. It could be because of our rampant alcohol problem that we have. Everyone goes to the pub. Everyone's having some beers. Everyone's an overstatement, but the vast majority, you'll find them at the pub. And it's where a lot of conversations happen. So when it comes to some of these true crime cases and we're looking at the pub test, what we're considering is, will some of the stories that the people are saying actually line up with something that the vast majority of people would consider reasonable? Because it's true on both sides of an argument, particularly with these high-profile cases. You've got a vocal minority screaming justice has not been done. You got another vocal minority saying, no, justice has been served in this case. And often we bog down in detail of the DNA and all these other things. But sometimes it's good to take a step back and just listen to the story itself. Does what the person is presenting make sense? Is it believable? Would it pass the pub test? So it's now time for a tiny bit of shameless self-promotion. I'm Owen. I'm a fiction writer, as I've already mentioned. And if you're checking the About Us in the YouTube bio, you'll see a couple of books that are released at the moment. And if you like mysteries, I would really encourage you to go and read Corporate Jungle. Now, I grew up reading all Agatha Christie books, enjoyed the Hercule Poirot, Miss Marple. Some of her better books, in my opinion, were without either of those two protagonists in it. So if that's the sort of read you enjoy, then check out Corporate Jungle. And this is why we've started this channel. Because when you write, you try to make something believable and yet still can surprise. And so with some true crime cases, you're just looking for that, well, will that be believable, and would any twist in it not jump the shark, so to speak, or drop the alligator through the roof? Because as a fiction writer, you don't want to take things out of that realm of believability. And in some of the cases that we're going to look at, we will be asking that question. Have the people taken what they're said out of the realm of believability? So what we're talking here is not just in the things that they've said, but the things that they've done after the particular event. Would it be something that a normal innocent person would do? Or would it be something that normally a guilty person would do? Well, these are the questions that we're asking to see the conclusion we come to if we think justice has been served. Now, if this is the sort of thing that you think you would enjoy, then please hit the subscribe and hit the bell notification. So when we release our first video next week, you'll be one of the first to see our premiere episode of the pub test. And what is that particular episode going to be about? Our first case, we'll be looking at the story of Teresa Halbach. Now, this case was made mostly famous by the Netflix documentaries Making a Murderer, and that was split over 2 seasons. If you'd like to know the real detail of this entire case, and you've got the time, absolutely binge that series. It's goes in quite detail on that case, and we won't be going into all the nitty-gritty of the case. We're only going to be pulling apart about 4 particular things to look at to see if the case passes the pub test. And particularly we'll be focusing on the person who's in prison for Teresa's murder, being Stephen Avery. Now, there's a big population of people that feel that he should not be in prison. In fact, around 500,000 people signed a petition and sent it to the president to get him pardoned, to get him released, because they said he's innocent. Now, the president apparently said, look, it's not a federal issue, it's a state issue, so he couldn't get involved. So does his story, though, pass the pub test? Is that particular person innocent? Well, we'll delve into a little bit of that, and then we'll put the question to you. Do you think the story passes the pub test? So that wraps up our introductory video. If this is the sort of thing you're interested in, then as we've already said, do the usuals so that you can make sure you don't miss any content at all. And also, we have about 7 videos in the works at the moment. So we plan to be releasing 1 a week. But if you know of a case and you think, hey, this could actually use the pub test treatment, then send us a message and we'll look into it, and maybe we'll run that particular one. But thank you again for watching, and we will see you next time at the premiere of the pub test.